People online, and we're gonna go ahead and start. I want to remind you all that this meeting is being recorded. We use the recording. The whole presentation gets turned over to the base, which puts it on YouTube for benefit if you all review it later or anybody else who wasn't able to be here. So just a reminder that's being recorded. Go ahead. So a quick review of the agenda. We do have a pretty full agenda tonight. And so we're going to try to keep things moving while also having enough time for discussion. So that's going to be a balancing act for me. I just want to let you know. We'll do agenda review and quick meeting logistics, welcome and introductions, some quick RAB business, and then we'll have the TAP presentation. And I know you all have received the report, so we'll have the presentation and questions and discussion about that. And then the environmental restoration program status update. Followed by questions and comments and closing remarks, and we'll do our best to get out of here at 7:30. We do get kicked out of here before 8, so we're not going to run very late if we do run late. Hopefully not. Moving on. So quick meeting logistics. Go ahead. Most of you already know the way we run RAB meetings is that RAB members, both at the table and online, are able to ask questions at the end of each topic. I believe the RAB members online are Chris Clark and Marianne Vinsky. Are there any other RAB members online? Please raise your hand and I will be alerted to that. So just raise your hand or wave at me or whatever to be called on to speak. Please introduce yourself every time you speak so that everybody in the room and everybody online knows who is speaking. And that helps us with the meeting summary as well. I say please observe a 2-minute limit. You all know that I don't enforce it. However, because there's also a lot to get through, I just ask people to be concise and so that everybody has an opportunity to submit their questions and comments. For anybody from the public who is participating in the room or online, we do ask the public to hold their questions to the end of the meeting. And so if you're in the room, you'll be able to raise your hand and be called on to speak. And again, we'll observe just try to be concise. For people online, we ask you to submit your questions through the chat feature, and you can go ahead and type it in at any point in time if you can't remember your question to the end of the meeting. And we'll address those questions and read them at the end of the meeting. Next slide. Real quick for people on the computer, please keep your cameras off to save bandwidth. That helps make sure that everything works fine. You can see who else is online by clicking on participants. RAB members can raise their hand to be called on to speak by clicking on the little raised hand. And then unmute yourself when called on. And again, public participants, please use the chat to type your question. Next slide. Do we have anybody on the phone? Okay, we're going to go on. I don't think we have anybody on the phone. Excellent. So welcome and introductions. We have both our community co-chair and our base co-chair have subs in tonight. So that's great. And we're just going to do a quick welcome. Jane, go ahead.
Jane Axon, just saying welcome. Thank you all for coming. Look forward to the presentation. That's it.
Okay, and Colonel Glass.
Hi, Colonel Glass. I am honored to be here today on behalf of Colonel Lascoon. I am a pilot by trade, so I'm learning a lot about this stuff. So I'm extremely excited to work with you. I think I'm allowed to say it, and I will. So here we go. I will be replacing Colonel Lascoon as the wing commander at several months from now. And I'm just really excited to work with all of you. And I want to continue the great work that's been ongoing. And I'm just excited to get to know you all. Please bear with me. I'll ask probably a lot of questions that will sound silly because I'm learning. So I appreciate it, but it's wonderful to meet everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. I'm not going to go through welcome and introductions, but I am going to make sure everybody on both in the room and on our line know what RAB members are here. In the room, we have Jane Oxon, Don Thomas, Kristen Millo, and Kelly Peace. Any other RAB members in the room? Okay. We have Mass DEP here. We have Robert Lewis from the Air National Guard Bureau, Restoration Program Manager. We have representatives, like Jen Baker from the base and Lieutenant Colonel Sinclair and lots of consultants. And online, Our RAB members, I believe, are Chris Clark and Marianne Rubinski. And we have lots of other folks online as well, many of which are contractors. We have our presenters on the line, and we have Air National Guard and Army Corps of Engineers representatives. These are, so our team, you've seen this before with the addition tonight of Emily Hoskin, who is the advisor on the Technical Assistance for Public Participation. I should say advisor, not advisory, but she's here to do the presentation tonight. The meeting summary, we're not going to approve tonight because you haven't seen it yet. That's on me. I've had a lot going on and I apologize. That's completely on me. That's my responsibility. And you will have it next week from the January meeting. So keep going. Ooh, that's next week. And Emma Kosub is on the line. And many of us are getting public safety. Okay, Emma, hang on. We're getting a public safety alert on many phones in the room.
What is the?
Yeah.
It is a white male who is missing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's not a tornado or anything that we need to be aware. Okay. Emma, you may go. Emma, you can go ahead and present on the community involvement plan, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. Stop me if you need to, if something comes up, but hopefully it won't. Yes, I'm Emma Casa, the project manager for the Air National Guard Community Engagement Support Contract. We're supporting Barnes with a community involvement plan update. So I shared a presentation last January, but updates from then. Right now, we're preparing the draft final CIP. And the community interview process has been completed and those results will be incorporated into the update. And in terms of that draft final, the RAB will have the opportunity to review and provide comments. We anticipate that to happen in early summer of this year, and that'll come from me.
Okay. We'll have a chance for any questions on that in just a minute. And technical assistance for public participation contracting, Colonel Sinclair.
I just wanted to, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Sinclair, I just wanted to cover some of the process in obtaining a TAP contract, not the grant, not any of that. This is just for the contracting and acquisition portion. Generally, when we're looking at it, we're looking at three areas that we can do: a sole source with a university, a sole source with another one, or we're going competitive. By regulations, they're supposed to go competitive first. So that's why writing in the grant is very important in order to justify anything else. So having credentials, things like that is is really important. Right now, we're in the working the performance work statement and the government estimate for TAP Grant 3 in order to get that out for the solicitation. I will be sending it to Amy, the paragraph, and I will offer it to the RAB members in order to do a quick review with 1 week.
Yeah, you'll send that to me. I'll send that out to RAB members tomorrow. It's just one paragraph but we're looking for a review of that in about a week to make sure that performance work statement paragraph says what you want it to say.
Yeah, that'll be like the key, because that's what I hold the contractor to and everything. And then at the end, once we have a contract, they do all the performance, we'll have the technical deliverables, which will be the report, the briefing, and as well that 1 to 2 page summary that with basic terms. So right now we're working on the acquisition. We're working towards the ending. However, I'll turn it over to Robert Lewis.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question before we go? So you're saying that order on the number 1 is backwards, that competitive solicitation is gonna be first? Is that what I'm understanding you said?
By regulation, we're supposed to have as much competition as possible. As a representative to help you, I will do my best, but that is not my call. That is the acquisition team or the contracting team. I will give them justifications, but if they find my justification is not adequate, they'll go full and open.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay? And that was Kelly Peace, just for the record,
I'm
for
sorry.
folks online. That's okay. Go ahead, Robert.
All right, hey, yeah, so just the status for TAP Grant 3, AFTEC has issued a funding assurance letter, so their intention is to give us the money. We just don't know when that money will come, so it could be a few months down the road, it could be even longer, but it is definitely well, I won't say definitely, it is supposed to be coming. As she was saying, we're working on the PWS, or the performance work statement, and what she sends out, it's really important on this, this paragraph, this section 5, is to make sure that the scope is what the RAB is looking for. And that way we can make sure the contract is tailored to meet the needs that you're, seeking. Other than that, we're gonna try and, work on the contract and package and have everything ready to go so that when the money is available, we'll be able to get the TAP grant issued. And that's it.
Okay, and then real quickly on our upcoming meetings, just make sure you have these on the calendar. They are the fourth Thursday of the month, every 3 months, January, April, July, and October, with the exception of, we do make adjustments when needed. And we are gonna scoot the January meeting back to the 29th, which is the 5th Thursday, because I think the 1st is a Thursday. So just to make sure that, through the holidays and stuff, we get everything prepared and out. So those are the, next 3 meeting dates. And now, any other questions on the community involvement plan, the TAP grant, the next meetings? Okay, so I will be sending the performance work statement out to you tomorrow, and you'll be getting the meeting summary from the last meeting next week. Okay, and now we're going to turn it over to Emily. I think Colonel, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna introduce, the program manager for this for Coletta is on, Lily, and she was gonna introduce, Emily. So Lily?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, everyone. We're glad to be here with you today. We're glad that Emily Hoskin is on our team as the author of the report and the presenter for the presentation for you today. So when you're ready, Emily, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Emily Hoskin. I also would like
Oh.
to get,
You speak up a little bit?
can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, sorry, I think my headset adjusted a little bit.
Okay.
Once again, my name is Emily Hoskin. I am glad to join you guys today. I did write the report and create the presentation, and I just want to talk a little bit about PFAS and health effects, possible health effects related to PFAS. I want to emphasize that many, when you go out doing this research on PFAS, there's a lot of information out there from a lot of sources. I try to emphasize and pull from very reputable sources, mainly the federal government. But, there's a lot of information out there. I also will say that so far for the report, we did get comments back from Sarah, but I am looking forward to any additional comments from anybody else so that we can make adjustments to the report and provide the best possible report to you guys that we can provide. So next slide, please. So very quickly, just going over what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to do a very brief history of PFAS and possible exposures just to make sure that anybody who could be new does have that background knowledge. I will then talk about the current federal drinking levels and also the National Health and Nutritional Evaluation Survey detection levels. Then I will switch over and actually do a brief summary of sampling that has been done at the Westfield Wells on those PFAS, limiting it to those current compounds that the EPA has determined has placed MCL levels on. Changing focus to actual how we're going to detect PFAS in humans and those possible health effects, specifically emphasizing a little more on cancer. And then just a general questions and answers that I have found good for related to PFAS. So next slide, please. So I just did go ahead and include a list of acronyms. Some of these stuff is found within the presentation. That is a shortened version just because there's limited space. I don't expect you guys all to remember it. I will try to use maybe the longer version as I talk, but just for your reference. Next slide.
And we do have the handouts so people can refer to those.
Great. So let's talk about a little bit about the history of PFAS. We know PFAS was first developed and started being manufactured in the 1940s and was quickly used globally because how useful it was found and its properties as so well liked. Unfortunately, as soon as the 1880s, there was studies showing that PFAS may impact the health of humans. And so we started being aware that PFAS is a potential problem. By 2000, there was manufacturers that started phasing out PFAS compounds in their process. But once again, it has been being used so worldwide and it is impacting a lot. PFAS was, at least in the United States, potentially first detected in Minnesota in 2006. CDC included PFAS in that National Health and Nutritional Evaluation Survey, 2007. EPA issued its first health advisory in 2009, and then actually issued an additional health advisory with a limit, 2016. It was added, it was set on the priority list, substance priority list for additional studies in 2017. And then the CDC did start assessing in 2019 PFAS levels in military installations. And then within just this last year in 2024, the EPA did publish MCL levels on 5 PFAS compounds. I just saw 5 because there is many PFAS compounds out there. Next slide. So no, there is officially no universally accepted definition of PFAS, but it is identified as having a strong carbon-fluorine bond. We know it is highly persistent in the environment. It does not like to break down. That is the reason why it's commonly referred to as a forever chemical. And even when it does break down, a lot of times it just forms into a different PFAS compound. And it does accumulate over time. And that's one of the reasons why it poses such a health risk. Next slide, please. So this is something, like I said, in my research, I did stumble on this in one of the many studies I looked into, and just gives a kind of general idea of potentially how long PFAS can stay in the body. None of this stuff is set in stone, but it just kind of gives you an idea really on the variety of how different PFAS can be in the different compounds. So you look at that first one, PFOA. You're looking at a potential range of 2 to 10 years in humans, but then you look at the bottom one, the PFBA, and we're looking at potentially hours. Once again, there's a lot of stuff that's still being researched and studied related to PFAS. So this is something that could potentially change over time as more knowledge is gathered. Next slide, please. So I know this slide has a lot of words on it. I don't generally do this on a presentation, but this really emphasizes how much PFAS is potentially out there and how many sources of PFAS there is. It has been detected pretty much globally, even in the Arctic and Antarctic. It is, acknowledged as widespread. Obviously, industries, we're going to see a lot of PFAS in industries, specifically in textiles and pesticides, nonstick cookware. And as industries produce the items that include PFAS, they are really released in the air, in the water, in the soil. We know that firefighting foam is a common source of PFAS, had been for years, but even just the disposal of PFAS material in landfills that then leak due to defects in the liner also is adding to PFAS contamination. Obviously, in the process of manufacturing, a lot of those items do end up in your household. That was main purpose of so many of these things. And so we do know that PFAS is in people's houses, at least it has been in the past. We do inspect people who worked in industries that produce PFAS to have higher levels of PFAS because of their exposure, but also we're seeing that in firefighters and those in the food packaging industry because of how much PFAS is found in food packaging. Next slide, please. So obviously PFAS likes to move around. It can be released into the air settle onto the soil, make its way into the groundwater. So that is something that is a common thing. So we know that PFAS does work its way into our water sources. We are finding PFAS in public water supplies and private wells. We also know that PFAS is entering into soil through uses of, we're treating our wastewater, creating biosolids, and then using that biosolids or the sewage sludge and spreading out to agricultural and then contaminating our own soil. So we as humans in the product in producing and releasing PFAS from our bodies are actually continuing a cycle of PFAS contamination. One of the things that needs to be emphasized is, we do see PFAS moving up the food chain. It will bioaccumulate within that food chain, within our food, within ourselves, because PFAS, basically our absorption of PFAS is occurring at a higher, faster rate than its elimination. And that is the definition of bioaccumulation, that basically we're getting more PFAS into our body than we can get PFAS out of our body. And that is going to lead to a higher concentration. And when it comes to the food chain, as we move up the food chain and we see that bioaccumulation and an increased concentration as different animals and eat plants and then animals eat animals, we're going to see higher concentration within the food that we consume ourselves. Next slide, please. So I will emphasize that the primary way PFAS enters the body is through ingestion, whether that is drinking water, food, even dust. Other sources are less studied, less identified, but there is a possibility, specifically with inhalation. If you're in a manufacturing setting and that PFAS is everywhere, there is an opportunity for that PFAS to enter your body.
Hold
But like going too fast?
No, we lost you for a minute. You
Okay.
said if you're in a manufacturing situation and the PFAS is, and then we lost you,
Okay, am I
but
back
now we
now?
can hear you fine. So pick
All
up
right.
there.
All right, so I mean, obviously, like I said, the most common way and the most accepted form of PFAS exposure is ingestion, but inhalation, like I said, if you're exposed to it, it does, you're inhaling it into your body if it becomes aerosolized. And also, there has been limited studies to find that transdermal absorption, meaning through your skin, could potentially happen, but these are basically, at this point, people are doing all sorts of studies trying to figure out the full impact of PFAS. So because PFAS is in so many products, everybody's trying to figure out where PFAS is coming from. And honestly, there may potentially be other exposure pathways, but they haven't been identified. And this is something that will take years and years to fully understand how humans can be impacted by PFAS. Next slide. So I am shifting gears. We're moving from our history and exposure to our current maximum contaminated level MCL drinking water limits. These were published by the EPA last year. You'll see only 5 compounds have been identified. The first column is actually the goal that the EPA has set out. You'll notice with PFOA and PFOS, we're looking at a goal of 0, while the other ones, the goal in the MCL is the same. So for PFOA and PFOS, we are looking at an MCL of 4, and I'm an emphasis on parts per trillion or nanograms per liter. So we are talking about very, very limited small amounts of water that the EPA has set for our drinking water systems. Next slide, please. The next is very quickly the National Health and Nutritional Nutritional Examination Survey. This is a CDC thing, and this is the detection level they set on these specific compounds. Detection level is potentially anything that's tested over this, they consider a number. Anything below is kind of like this vague thing that's potentially a zero. Now, I'm going to emphasize detection levels are set at different levels at different organizations, and there could be potentially other levels of detection that other organizations said, hey, this is our detection level, or this is our detection level. This just happens to be the one for this specific survey and what they chose to put as their detection level. Next slide. So I want to talk some about the actual wells and their sampling results. I will emphasize that EPA only set MCL last year, and you'll see most of the sampling that happened did occur before 2024. The specifics of what's happening with the wells, treatment, no treatment, if the wells are on, the wells are off, was not in the scope of this, my contract. But I did pull a little information from bits and pieces that I was provided. I think any additional questions about the frequency of the sampling, why some needs to be referred to the actual city and potentially additional experts. But by the information that I did pull off the Massachusetts website, I did see several of the PFAS compounds to be exceeding the MCL. A handful of those samples for the finished water did exceed even after treatment. Like I said, the information I pulled from different sources was potentially these wells are not even particularly online, in the sense of they may be running them, but not actually sending them out distribution into the public for consumption. That may be not true. Like I said, I had my accessibility to that information was limited. Going into the specific compounds, yes, that is true. They do have 2029 to actually comply with the EPA levels. So officially, if they're doing anything now, they're just getting ahead of the game, which is a wonderful thing. So for FHPO-DA, all the sample results were zero. So great. We don't have that in the water. For PFNA, for the most part, the sample results were zero, except for two detects in the sense of over the survey detection level, but both of them were found to be below the MCL level. For the PFOA, the PFOS, and the PFHXS, yes, we did find several sample results above the MCL, and the next three slides are going to show a breakdown of graphs to show what those were. So if you go on the next slide. So the first one I did a breakdown for PFOA. You'll see each source, each sampling results were broken down on whether it was raw or post-treatment. You will see that well 7 and 8 definitely had many sample results are currently above the MCL. Well 2 definitely has some above the MCL. But I think, once again, these are raw samples and we're anticipating that based on everything. Post-treatment, some were above. I think they're working on getting them below. Next slide. This is an emphasis, it looks very similar because basically we're seeing the same thing from one compound to the other. Well 8 and 7 do have elevated levels, and we're finding them well above the MCL. Well 2 raw is above the MCL but closer. I know it's hard to see from this graph, but for the post-treatment of well 2, you can see a little bit of blurps of blue along that line on the bottom, showing that from 2019, they were sampling and these samples were below the MCL. So the post-treatment seems like they're getting that taken care of. Next slide. And basically, it's a little bit of a repeat. We're seeing well 8 and 7 again above the MCL by a good distance. Well 2 closer to MCL, and then the post-treatment of well 2 is well below the MCL for several years now. So next slide. So we're going to move into the health effects part of this presentation, starting with how do we know if there's PFAS? We're going to know that through testing blood. And that is something that I'm not going to deep dive into it. I am not a health professional, but I wanted to emphasize that that is how we determine who has PFAS. Is you need to go get your blood tested. Now, there is an emphasis that even within the same household, depending on where they are, who they are, their health, many factors, you may find a variety of PFAS levels. A big factor in that is the health of the individual. So those individuals who have kidney problems, who may have more, they will have more difficulty eliminating PFAS from their body, and they'll end up with a higher concentration as somebody who has a healthier kidney. The primary way we do excrete PFAS is through urine, but we also can excrete PFAS through menstruation and potentially breast milk, which is a whole other can of worms. Because obviously, if putting it through breast milk, logically your child is drinking that breast milk. So, next slide, please. So, in my research found there was several health effects that were considered the most common related to PFAS. This is actually a limited list. There is others that we could have included, but they have even less research done. I will emphasize that many of these are very much where they're still in the research stage. A lot of the studies are done in labs on animals, may not have potentially moved into the human stage, and there's definitely limited information available on the local level. So with that in mind, let's talk about some of those health effects. The first is the elevated cholesterol levels. So several studies have found it does elevate cholesterol levels, but they're not sure why it does. They just know that they just have determined that the exposure of PFAS causes this. And obviously with elevated cholesterol, we're going to see an increase in heart diseases. Next is next slide. Then go back one slide, please. Back one slide. Back. Thank you. So the next is the response to vaccines. Unfortunately, PFAS has been shown to suppress the immune system. And without that response from the immune system, vaccines simply are not going to work as effectively without that. So that is something to be aware of. Like I said, these are limited studies. Very little is done on the local level. Stuff is still being researched. So they do believe that there potentially increased risk in infections due to the vaccines and the immune system being suppressed. Next slide, please. So another one is altered liver enzyme levels. They have determined that PFAS does cause inflammation of the liver. It also causes triglyceride buildup, aka it makes the liver fatty, and fatty livers do not work as well as non-fatty livers. So it's going to disrupt the body's ability to metabolize lipids or fat on the liver, and they believe it's being linked to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, meaning with the alcoholic, we expect liver issues. These individuals who are not alcoholics, and they are also having liver issues, and it is becoming an epidemic. When it comes to pregnancies, they are concerned that PFAS is actually harming the placenta, which is going to lead to preeclampsia, poor fetal growth, and obesity. The primary issue is the destruction of particles and that fat balance. Please, in the placenta, we just talked about the liver and its fattiness. So once again, PFAS making those, doing whatever it does. But I want to re-emphasize again, this research is complicated. It has been done in a limited scope, and a lot more has to be done to truly understand how PFAS can impact pregnancies. Next slide, please. So final one, we are going to talk about cancer. Based on the American Cancer Society website, human studies have found PFAS exposure does increase testicular and kidney cancers. In the laboratory, it's been linked to liver, breast, pancreatic. There is other possible cancers, prostate, bladder, ovarian cancers, those have not been fully confirmed. Now, before we move forward, I want to emphasize in my research and the many studies I went into for PFAS, there is any number of cancers that people were trying to link to PFAS that is very much, we don't know. Whenever it comes to cancer, there is so many risk factors or so many factors involved that saying that this cancer was caused by one thing is really, really hard to do. So these are saying that we believe PFAS is causing this, but very limited cancers are only caused by one thing. Being, your exposure in your lifetime, you may not be exposed to PFAS forever. You may be exposed to many other things that could be your cancer, could be causing your cancer. There's just so many different risk factors that involve with cancer to identify one. So let's go into a little bit about cancer in the city of Westville. So next slide. So this standardized incident ratio is put out on the federal level, state level, as a way to kind of look at, rates of cancers, comparing a local level to a bigger population, in this case, the city of Westville versus the state of Massachusetts. So it is a very simple calculation. And when those simple calculations, there are a lot of things they're not taking into consideration. But it is a way to just kind of say, hey, where are we at? So the number observed is the number of actual cases. Now, this counts all cases, no matter the amount of time that person has lived in the city of Westville. They could have cancer and only lived in Westville for 6 months, and the rest of the time they've lived in California. So they're just counting the number of cases, not looking into their background, their amount of time, any of that. The expected is taking the state rate and adjusting it down to the city of Westville's population. And so we're going to take the actual cases, the expected, and then we're going to divide it. The multiplication of 100 is just to bring it to a whole number. And pretty much if you're over 100, that is assuming that gives you an idea that potentially the cancer occurring in the smaller population is occurring at a higher rate than the state overall. So next slide. So let's talk about the cancers. I did include, so this was pulled from a Massachusetts state website, breaking it down to the city of Westville. I did go ahead and include all the different cancers they included because I just felt like it's good information to provide to the community. You will see that emphasized on the kidney and the breast cancer. Some of the others were not included on the female male because those are ones that were most identified as likely to be related to PFAS. Once again, just because you have kidney cancer doesn't mean it was caused by PFAS. It's just the number of, it's just, we know that there appears to be an elevated amount of kidney cancer in the city of Westville. And based on the fact that we have 132 and we're wanting to see a number lower than 100, yes, we're seeing elevated on kidney, we're seeing elevated on breast. Now, overall, for all types of cancers, we do see a lesser number than what would, for the state overall. So next slide. I did break it down from male to female. So, sorry, for the females, once again, we see elevated on kidney, we see elevated on breast. We do see ovary cancer is lower than that magical 100 number. So that is good. And overall, women are on par. The city of Westville women are on par with the state of Massachusetts. So, we do see that elevated. Again, does that mean it's related to PFAS? Unless somebody does a really, really detailed study about everybody's life and everything they're exposed to, it's a possibility. And we always want to eliminate anything that could cause cancer if we can, right? So next slide, please. For males, with the testes, it is well below the state level, but the kidney at 138 is a good chunk above that 100, the magical 100. for males overall, the cancers are under that 100. So when you look overall, but then again, this is just showing all the cancer rates. Not all of them, or not many of them, do not appear to be related to PFAS, but I just wanted to get that information out there to everybody. Next slide.
Kelly Pease, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Can we go back to 2 slides?
2 slides. This is to females?
Yeah. I was trying to figure out the color code for those really high ones that weren't labeled. The 165.
That's brain, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Brain,
Yeah.
the dark green is Hodgkin lymphoma, it looks like.
Yeah.
There's a couple greens in there. Pancreas.
Is the other high one? All right, thank you. I just.
Yeah, those are the 3 highest there.
Yeah.
Those green ones.
Quite high, really, yeah, okay, thank you.
And I
Thanks.
apologize. I tried my best to try to put all the labels on everyone and it became a mess. So that's why I just emphasized those PFAS related ones. There is always a limitation on how pretty you can make it. And I like I said, I didn't want to exclude any of the cancers, but because the information is out there, and like I said, there's always new studies showing potentially a new cancer. So I didn't want to exclude them, but I know it's kind of hard to make those connections and all that. So I apologize for that, but
It's all right, you had to choose a lot of different colors.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So my last couple is just some common questions, basically in the process of searching internet, looking is questions I found came up in my research, or not came up. So one of the questions that I was asked in this process of writing this report is, how much does age or time exposure increase my risk, increase my chances? I spent many hours, and if somebody can find this answer, they're doing better than me. But I couldn't find it. I could not find where anything definite, like, oh, you're in your 60s, or if you've been exposed for 20 years or 40 years. I think everything's so new, there's not a real good answer. Amount of PFAS exposed to, once again, basically EPA has put out these goals and these really low limits because they know any exposure is bad because of that bioaccumulation, and because it's everywhere. But in the sense of a 1,000 parts per trillion versus 10 parts per trillion, once again, it just hasn't been established. It's something that they're still working on. Next slide. I'm gonna try to go faster. I know I'm out of time. Getting PFAS. We already, in a previous slide, we talked about the half-life. So it is possible for your body to naturally allow PFAS to leave through urine, through blood, breast milk, but it really depends on the compound. It depends on individual health. It also depends on if your exposure to PFAS stops. So if you can't eliminate your exposure to PFAS, it's really complicated. Yes, there is potential increased concern in young children because there's so much PFAS in materials, in fabrics, carpet, spraying down your couch to make it, stain resistant, and children chew on things, all sorts of things. And so there is a potential, a source of PFAS just by children's ability to put everything in their mouth. And I've already referenced this, that also babies being exposed to PFAS through breast milk. I mean, the simple fact is babies are so little, that little bit of PFAS that's coming through the breast milk may be a big impact on them. Next slide, please.
Emily, I'm going to stop you there if you don't mind, just in the interest of time.
Yeah, I apologize.
No, you're fine. We're also tight on time overall. So, but the RAB members do have your handout, so they have your questions and answers. And I think I'd rather go to what their questions are while they're online and sitting around the room.
Okay.
They may touch on some of these, they may not. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yeah, and honestly, the question and answers are pretty straightforward situations. So,
okay, all right. So I'm going to open it up to RAB questions and comments at this time. Again, just as a reminder, we have several RAB members here in the room. We have a couple online. The RAB members online, please raise your hand, and we'll call on you. And Kristen has her hand in the air. And again, to everybody, please remember to state your name so we can have a good recording and everyone knows who's speaking. Go ahead, Kristen.
Kristen Mello, I'm gonna leave my content questions to the end so that everybody else can have their chance first, because you know me. But my first question is procedural. My agenda says at 6:50, we're talking about the ERP status update before questions. Do you want to do that before questions, or you want to do questions and then the update later?
I think I'd like to do questions on this for maybe about 10 minutes.
Okay, well then hit everybody else and then talk to me when you're ready.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. Kelly Peace.
Yes, hi, Kelly Pease. I had a question about, I guess, and Krista probably knows this, because I know she worked with UMass and getting some folks from Westfield tested, but I guess how hard is it for a regular hospital to get like blood tested on for PFAS? And one of the reasons I asked that too is because like, obviously we test for lead poisoning now for children and everything, you know, and would that be a realistic thing to propose, is getting tested for pregnant women to see if they have PFAS in their blood?
How about the rest of us?
I know, I was thinking about the baby. I was thinking about the baby. so
Emily, do you know the answer?
breastfeed, if
Do you
that-
know the answer to how easy it is to get your blood tested, or especially pregnant women who might want to know
I'll be
that?
honest, if you go to like the next slide or something like that, go to the
Maybe
next
so.
slide, I think.
How do I know?
It's basically, I reference the fact that you really need to just work with your healthcare provider. I think somebody said that it's doable, but not covered with insurance. Maybe that's something will change with time as PPAC becomes more prevalent. It'll be like lead.
I think Kristen might know something about that.
That it is covered in Massachusetts, and you can go to your doctor and you can do it privately if you want. And if you want, I will send you that whole information. I present on this all the time. So I literally have the CPT codes for you and everything, like what they have to order and how they fill it out, and I'll send it to you.
Well, let's see if the VA will do it for.
Okay,
No, we have the VA info too, so that I.
okay, so Kristen knows how to have that.
That's good.
You've been here a long, long time and you've been drinking this water. See, when I go in for my blood work, which is usually just for cholesterol, I should ask for a PFAS test.
Yes, and you can go get it done.
But then I get these numbers and
You call me up and I'll help you.
oh,
Okay, and that, for the record, is Don Thomas speaking, so
that's right.
I want people online to know who was speaking to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
I
them.
just had my blood work done and I never thought to ask for a PFAS test.
Okay.
Mary Ann has a question on one.
Okay, Mary Ann, you go ahead and unmute yourself. You may speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Mary Ann Babinski, this is a crazy question, I guess. So since we don't know for sure where, if people have PFAS in their blood, whatever, for the many sources that you've just described of where they could have been exposed to PFAS, is it fair to say, or has there been any research to say that we know we've had it in our water? So chances are that the exposure that most people had in Westfield came from drinking the water over a long period of time. They may have gotten a bit additional exposure to PFAS through all these other sources that you've described. And I'm sure people across the country who maybe didn't have it in their water, I don't know if there is a place like that, they might have PFAS but be lower levels. So if we're trying to determine where the highest exposure came from, how do you get all that other information? You can't segment people off and just say you were only drinking water, you didn't use any of these other things to get exposed to it. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I mean,
Go ahead.
so, basically, I'm trying to process what you said in the sense of it would have to be a really detailed individual study. I mean, you would literally have to go into people's homes to be able to test for PFAS. You would have to identify industries and, around and test the air and test everything. And it would be very detailed to try to tease out the different levels of PFAS you could be exposed to versus, and so it's one of those things that, it is one of those things that is probably nearly impossible to say that where are all your sources, because there could be so many sources, and it's probably near impossible to say where is your highest contamination, because we know that PFAS is in the drinking water. But the reason why we're finding PFAS is so emphasis on the drinking water is because so much testing is being done, because it's an isolated something. It's a point of entry, we can test. But testing everywhere else is really hard to do. So, we can't even assume that drinking water is your highest source of PFAS unless we're doing testing everywhere. We just know that the drinking water is one of your sources of PFAS. Does that kind of help you?
Well, not really, but because I just want to say that most people drink water, you can't survive without drinking water.
Right.
And a lot of these other sources, couldn't you theoretically say that the majority of people, or Westview said, had higher concentrations, and some of these exposures, the health impacts that they've had are greater in Westfield than compared to the rest of the state. And I don't know if you've done any of this research with other communities in the state of Massachusetts that also had exposure through their drinking water. But if you could say that the majority of the people here, almost all people were drinking water here, were exposed to it through their water, they then may have gotten some of it through other sources, and some people would have more or less of it from other sources. So I think it would be fair to say that most of the PFAS that ended up in the people in this area came from the water. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, Dawn Thomas has her hands raised.
I don't have a number on this one. It says PFAS sources. It kind of ties into what Mary Ann was speaking. And I'm looking around this dial, this sundial type thing. I think everything on here I've been in contact with.
Right.
And is the government or anybody legislating, like, Robert Kennedy, this new thing, is he getting rid of this stuff out of these products? I mean, cleaning products, nail polish, dental floss.
And then deregulating.
Yeah. They are deregulated.
Sorry, Chris, I couldn't hear Kristen because they're sitting next to each other. If you could.
So they're going to start taking this PFAS out of these products.
You can buy plenty of products that have PFAS in it, and they're, yeah, absolutely.
As Mary Ann said, where do you get it from the water? You're getting it from all these other products.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like everything in my house, I'm going to get PFAS from, or if I take a pizza.
Yeah. Kelly, you have another question, or you're responding
No,
to Dawn?
Yeah, responding, because Kelly P's, we just had the PFAS task force down at the State House, and we met for a while and made recommendations, and hopefully we're gonna get some of them through a little bit more than we did the last session. But we did get through banning PFAS in firefighters turnout coats and stuff, so hopefully we're going down that path to limit it at least, and start doing better about understanding the exposure that people get to, because that's the
That's
part.
Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
John Thomas again. Well, my dental floss doesn't come from Massachusetts, and neither does my popcorn or my shampoo.
And that's the problem, if we do regulate, Kelly P's, if we do regulations at the State House to do something in Massachusetts, then it will affect imports, just like, I guess, same thing, and you hope other states would follow, just like with California with their restrictions on vehicles, and a lot of states follow along with them, so.
So then if your grandma didn't use it, don't use it.
She said if your grandma didn't use it, don't use it.
She was planning supplies, and she did paint her house. I don't know about pizza, she tried to do pizza, but.
Well, it didn't come out until later, and you saw the dates, right?
Things like ammonia,
Yeah.
right, which was a pure thing, and it wasn't like some kind of white that comes out and disinfects a million, sorry, it's Kristen. Right, so they had different and more pure things, so, we act like hippies, that might help.
But again, Kelly P's, I think the first step, hopefully we can get through the state, is just identifying. I think if people understand, then they may make buying choices, and that impacts it, So instead of trying to regulate it right away, you just say, you have to post if you have this certain
Oh,
level.
put a big red label.
Right, and then you'll see a lot of products out there PFAS free, and then they'll start transitioning. But I think that's probably how you gotta go about it.
Okay. Other questions and comments? Kristen's waiting to see if there are others, and then she's ready to go.
Chris Clark.
Chris Clark,
Hi,
go ahead.
hi,
Go ahead, Chris.
hi, everybody. Chris Clark here. Sorry I couldn't make it today. Thank you, Emily, for the presentation. It was really great. I just had a question. I just had a few questions of some documents that I was wondering if you had considered in your review. The first was the Hampden County exposure assessment that was conducted by ATSDR considered in your review?
No, like I said, I was provided certain documents and I found other ones and it was identified as ones that are useful, but I do not believe that one was used.
Okay, and as a follow-up, was the National Academy of Sciences, the NASM report, PFAS guidance for clinicians considered in the report?
I believe that one does sound familiar, but I would have to go through my citations to confirm that 100%.
Okay, thank you so much. And then the last question I had too was wondering about, because I guess one of the other things I noticed is the data that you presented on well water concentrations. I know it may not have been explicitly requested, but I believe Westfield has data going back to 2013 when we did one of the UCMR3s, I think it was UCMR3, detected PFAS in Westfield in 2013. Was that considered in your report?
I will acknowledge that I did find the PFAS levels on the Massachusetts website. And when I realized this was such good data and honestly more recent data, that is what I wanted to present because I feel like the more recent information is what is concerned. And I did not particularly go digging and looking for additional data, additional older data that could be available.
Okay, thank you so much. And then I guess sorry if I could continue to ask some
Go ahead,
follow-up
Chris.
questions. Thank you so much. Was transgenerational exposure? So for example, my mom was drinking PFAS in the 70s, 80s, and 90s before she had my sister and I. And while pregnant with my sister, my nephew was exposed through my mom. I'm wondering if your research has considered transgenerational impacts of PFAS exposure.
Besides the potential health risk when it comes to pregnancies and then also the transition of PFAS through breast milk, no, I did not go into detail on the multiple generations potential exposure and how one person being exposed could then translate into the next generation. I did not.
Okay, thank you so much. Those are just a few of my questions. I might have more later. I might just send those in writing over email. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
I wanna just touch base before we do more questions. We are at 7:00. We were supposed to start the environmental restoration program status update at 6:50. I know Kristen still has some questions or comments I think she wanted to make. So I wanted to just do a time check. From a library perspective, I think we're okay to stay till 7:45. It depends on whether you all are willing to do that. But I think 7:45 is going to be our cutoff. People are nodding that seems to be okay. So Kristen, let's go to you and then we'll move on to the environmental restoration program updates.
If you prefer, I take it offline and do it by email. We could do that if you need to.
You want to do it by email?
You think that
She's got.
she's gonna be able to answer these questions?
Okay, so we're gonna take Kristen's comments by email. And if we have
Or if
time,
you want, I can read them now for the record and then they can know what they're about. And then you can I'll document it all because nobody's gonna take notes these fast. But they're just.
Can we make it part of, Kelly Pease, can we make it part of the record if you email it in and do that instead of having to read it?
Yeah.
sure, we can do that. I can make it part of the meeting summary.
Yeah, because it's not gonna add to the conversation at the table.
Got it.
It's only there are errors and omissions that need to be addressed in order for this to be a successful contract.
Okay,
So I'll write them down and I'll share them with everybody that needs it to be shared with. You just tell me who I have to send it to.
okay,
Make sure that it's all right? Because you guys have rules about shit, right? So I think you tell me who it has to go to do it appropriately, and I will be happy to collate it all.
I would say, for starters, send it to your two RAB co-chairs, community and base, to Lieutenant Colonel Sinclair and to Robert. And we'll start, and we'll start there and distribute from there to, I mean, RAB members are gonna see them. But we're gonna start, rather than you emailing everybody.
And I did, by the way, just send everybody the info about how to get your blood tested, because you know you're all exposed. So.
But I wanted to talk about John Thomas, where we could follow up with Chris said, does it go through DNA through generation to generation
Yeah.
to gen? Oh, thank you.
You're
What I
welcome.
needed to know.
And
Okay.
I'll fill you in later. The egg, when a pregnant woman drinks the water, it affects how the eggs inside a female embryo develop and receive their nourishment.
So my children have this from me.
When you drank it, if you had a baby girl, the eggs growing inside your baby girl's embryo were affected by the PFAS, denaturing them.
Oh, wonderful.
Your children also live in the world, which
Yeah.
means they're also exposed to
Well, that's right,
PFAS.
they're getting pizza boxes and macaroni.
Right.
popcorn.
Yeah, so don't completely blame yourself.
No, yeah, that's
Right, that's right. Okay, we're gonna move on to the environmental restoration program update. What we're gonna do is Kristen's gonna submit her comments to the two community co-chairs, Lieutenant Colonel Sinclair and Robert Lewis. We will get a copy of those questions out, obviously, to the TAP advisor and also to RAB members. And we will include them in the meeting summary. Fair? Okay, moving on to the environmental restoration program status update. It's 7:03. So we're about 13 minutes behind.
All right, thanks,
Robert.
everyone. Just flip over to the next slide. Yeah, I keep it short and sweet, for time. So site 2 is the one we're working on, the lease addendum. I expect to have a package ready to send to the city for them to look at to make sure it meets their, standards here in the next, I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks, from what I was told. So we'll get that over there and then, incorporate that permanent solution statement. And then as for the PFAS remedial investigation, you've seen the plat, you've got the comments, we've responded to the comments, you've got some more responses coming and so we're still working with, we still gotta get, responses to comments out to Mass DEP, but we're hoping to have that revised plat like soon, so we can get that finalized, rather quickly. And then, the next thing is we're just looking to start the field sampling activities, late spring 2025. So that's, pretty quick, just down and dirty, what's going on with the restoration program. Next slide, here's where we're at. Still just a reminder, we're at the UFE clap at the review and then beginning field work. We've shifted these dates just slightly out to reflect the new schedule. And the next slide. All right, and at this point, I believe I'm turning it over to Whitney. Is this you?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'm an engineer with Army.
Whitney,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you to not just speak to the RAB members sitting next to you, because they need to hear you online too, and this is here. So please introduce yourself for starters, and then speak up so everybody is able to hear you.
All right.
It may feel like you're yelling at Kristen because you're sitting next to her, but she can take it.
Still at the screen, then it's
She can take it.
I'm so okay with it, you're fine.
Hello, I'm Whitney Plaskett. I am an environmental engineer with the Army Corps. So I'll talk a little bit about where we are with the QAP. So the QAP is a Security Assurance Project Plan document. It's the long name for the work plan of the remedial investigation work that's gonna be starting here, in a month or two. So right now, we're updating the QAP based on comments received from Mass DEP. And also, I just wanted to thank the RAB members for taking like your own time and caring so much about this and providing comments, right? Because that's not an easy thing to do, look at a document like this and dive into the data, and some of you really did. So just wanted to say thank you. So we've got responses back to you this week. We'll see, what we respond with in return. So we're revising the QAP, like we said, we would with all of those responses, what we were gonna change. We're also incorporating some updates. So basically the updates are primarily due to the screening levels changing for DOD, in terms of remedial investigation. It's the same changes we talked about during the last RAB, so it is based on the January 2025 memo from the Assistant Secretary of Defense. And I have a slide that shows those numbers too and just what changed. And so those are getting incorporated into it. Because of those lower numbers in some cases, we're working to add back in to the remedial investigation, a site that was previously removed because the numbers were higher at the time. And so that's area of concern 3. So I'll show you where that is, and the sampling that we'll be doing there. And we're also adding some locations that are in kind of forested areas to take surface samples as well, surface soil samples to see what the concentrations are off base. And then the last one is very chemistry specific. So linear and branched isomers will be analyzed for 2 of the PFAS compounds. This is PFOS and PFHXS. These are the highest concentration PFAS that we see on the base. And what that'll tell us basically is when about they were manufactured. So before they refined the process, they used a manufacturing process that made branched, so you can just kind of screwed up molecules, basically. And then they refined it in the early 2000s and they became just more linear. So you've got branched molecules, you've got linear molecules. So that tells you about, when things were manufactured, and they also move differently in the environment. So your branched ones are more likely to be in water. Your linear ones are more likely to be in soil and sediment, and they act differently in the body as well. So you'll have all that data for those of you who want to dive into that when we get it. So these are the updated PFAS screening levels that we talked about last time, but we didn't have a table in here. Microgram per kilogram, that is a unit that, if you look at the memo, we've converted this basically so that they're whole numbers instead of being 0.00006 for some of these compounds. Tap water nanograms per liter, that's the same thing as parts per trillion that you hear all the time. So 4 parts per trillion is 4 nanogram per liter. And then over on the right-hand side of each number, we have the basis. So in some cases, the regional screening level, which is put out by EPA, is used if it's the lowest number. Basically, these are very conservative out of the ones that are on offer. If there's a maximum contaminant level, which is the drinking water criteria that's lower than the regional screening level, that's used. And then if the regional screening level is lower even than instruments can detect, typically, then we use what the instruments can detect. So that's the full list. The green ones are ones that have changed. So there's 2 new compounds, PFDA and then PFPRA, which is a fewer
short chain, huh?
short chain compound. So those will be part of the analyses now. So both of those, the soil and the tap water numbers are green because they're new. And then for PFOS and PFOA, the screening levels for soil went way down. So the ones that I was most recently working with were like 12,600 for PFOS for direct contact versus now we're looking at 0.63 basically in a snap fit. So it's dropped a lot. So next, Dan will talk about some of the background information that we're looking to gather.
Okay, so Dan Poland with the Army Corps of Engineers. I'll be talking about the background soil sampling and evaluation that we plan to add. First, I'd like to just give a definition for what we call background. Essentially, what it is the ambient concentrations of contaminants that are consistently present in the environment in the vicinity of the site that were generated by human activities that are actually unrelated to releases at the site. So I don't know if that made sense, but conceptual site model is that, as was presented earlier, PFAS is everywhere. So it has been documented that it is in the air and it is moved around by air currents. They found it in Switzerland and in the Alps, and it's just crazy by air movements. And so many studies have been done in New England to help determine what these values are in the soil, surface. So, essentially all the states in New England and New York have done soil background studies to try to figure out what is present in the environment. And they sampled in areas that are out in pristine areas that are away from known sources of potential PFAS contamination. They found low levels of PFAS in the soil. Some states have actually incorporated this background values into the regulations. Maine is the current one. All the other states, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, they're all, and even Massachusetts are all looking at adding background information to the regulations. So the purpose for the background evaluation is to help determine threshold values of this PFAS in the soil that are representative of what we call background, and be able to differentiate it from contributions from the site.
When you say soil contamination, if I grow my vegetables in the soil, is it contaminated now?
Chances are, if you sampled your soil, surface soil, you would find PFAS.
And then what about if I grow something in it? If it's growing season starting now?
I'm not a risk assessor, but that is a possibility, yes.
I can't eat vegetables either.
It's no fun.
Somebody diet plan.
All right, well, the vegetables at the store aren't tested either. So
Oh, I know.
these are the ones you grow at your house. They're gonna be cleaner than the ones you get at like a commercial place.
Right, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't ask at the vegetable stand what the PFAS level of their soil is.
Well, the other thing is, so if you don't use herbicides or pesticides, because they use PFAS
Right.
to help it stick to whatever you're spraying.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't use that, you're probably better off than
Okay.
we have.
Then you make your own compost.
You're
not buying it from somebody else.
Oh, for God's sake.
And you don't compost containers, because they're made of PFAS.
Moving on, slide. So this one here, I just wanted to focus your attention on. So this is a study that was done in Massachusetts. They collected 100 samples across the state in these pristine areas. And you can see the range of concentrations in the middle column there. And you can see they range quite a bit, but those values are actually fairly consistent across the entire New England. And some of these values are actually higher than screening levels. So the purpose is to figure out what we have for background site. So the next slide shows where we plan to sample locations around around the site in areas in our contractor did a study to figure out, okay, these are open spaces, or they're forested, they're not areas that have historical farm use or anything like that, and tried to stay away from any areas that could be potential other sources of PFAS. So we've got 10 locations here. We plan to sample every location and run those for analysis, and then we'll do a statistical analysis on the data to see what kind of background concentrations we have for individual PFAS. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so next slide is for Whitney. Whitney's gonna take over.
I'll just mention quickly, so the really low numbers that were the soil standard numbers, those are usually based on the amount of PFAS in soil that if hit by water will produce groundwater that might be groundwater above the drinking water criteria. So basically, the numbers for direct contact, like you out in your, I don't know about consumption, but at least like kids rolling around in the dirt, that kind of thing, like those numbers at least are still higher than the kinds of things that we see out in the forest. So
So grow my vegetables in contaminated soil and water them with contaminated water.
I don't know.
You're on the other side of town.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, this is just really a quick kind of going back to where AOC is. So area of concern 3 is the stormwater detention basin. It is the pink circle up there on the left. And it's now just back in with the other. So we have 1 to 8, 1 through 8 again, instead of 1 to 4. And then the next slide here, they're showing where we're gonna sample soils within that basin. So the 2 red dots, I see it in the standard now that we screened the data. And then the green ones are proposed to put a ring around it to figure out how far the extent goes.
Is that the area that has already had soil removed? Or was it, no, this is not, this soil was left there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One is the one
That's like at the line of the, yeah.
Yeah, like the runway even change places over time, like
Great.
look at the historical photos, so.
I want to just add one comment from Grace Greenberg from Army Corps of Engineers, who stated that studies have shown that PFAS can enter a plant. Oops, wait a minute. But the effect amount is still being studied.
Yeah, keep that.
She said PFAS uptake to plants from soils dependent on multiple factors and not fully understood. So I just wanted to share, some of the comments that are coming in there. Kelly, go ahead.
Yep, can it please, so you're saying that these green ones, these are the type of samples that are supposed to happen in the spring of 2025, like this time?
Yeah, so
Okay.
those will be
All right, thank you.
completed.
How far down are you going?
The surface is just 0 to 2, and then we'll do subsurface, which goes all the way down to 15.
What was that? 15? I'm sorry.
15 feet.
Yeah, just make sure the folks online can hear you too, because you guys are sitting next to each other. So
Sorry.
I couldn't hear that. I couldn't hear that answer when we were sitting.
Kristen wanted to know how deep into the soil they were sampling.
Thank you, Kristen.
Total soil is 0 to 15 feet below ground surface. Okay.
Okay, moving on. Okay, and now it's time for questions.
Oh, Kristen, your time.
Yes.
Okay, I have one. What was it? Okay. Can we go back a couple slides? Maybe I'll look back online. Keep going. Keep going. Oops, you missed it. There is one that we.
Is it-
No, not that one. This one, the leaching potential. Are we doing that with SPLT? Are we not doing that? Are we taking samples and leaching it to see how much comes up? Or
Sorry, are we doing it with what?
SPLT is the synthetic precipitation leaching procedure. It's what you use to determine how much of a hazardous material can come off of soil or well.
Thanks, because there's no way we could capture that in the meeting summary, because I don't know what you were talking about.
It's an EPA method of essentially steeping your tea bag to look at what's in the water.
Great, thanks.
And I was wondering whether we're looking at only the numbers that other people came up with and looking for or are we actually seeing of the contamination in Westfield, how much will leave?
Right, so this basically, it's describing how soil standards are just set, like by the state.
So we're not doing that.
Right, so at like S1, GW1, I have done like SPLT testing on different sites before, to figure out how much site specifically will.
Yeah.
So that's a thing you can get to when you're developing. It's more for cleanup numbers, right?
And so that's a later
Yeah,
process.
so for this, since we're in like remedial investigation and we have such low numbers to hit based on everyone else's work with leaching.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. We're sticking with the low numbers right now.
So we're gonna start there, but we're not at that place where we would look at the site-specific information. And if we were, it would be a later stage of the circle process.
If you're looking at it for the purposes of the remediation, then yes, then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question was about, it's way back, about, updating the lease addendum.
Yeah.
For site 2. On the information that we got a couple of days ago, the responses to the comments on the QAP, there is specifically, a comment about referring to the Air National Guard Council Office for information about where the lease is not being met. How does the update to the lease addendum square with that comment in the CLAP? The comment in the CLAP says that you can't follow the state regulations, that you can't be ruled by both the state and the federal regulations. But the lease specifically says that you will follow the cleanup process to the state regulation. I know because I've read it 700,000 times and I've quoted it to DOD a lot. So my question is, how do you square the comment that you can't follow both with the idea that you're updating the lease and the lease specifically says you will follow both? And if that's coming to the city, right, how does that square away?
Answer this, I think.
Please, yeah.
Okay.
Amanda, please introduce yourself for everybody online.
This is Amanda Martin from the Army Corps. The Army Corps is not really involved in Site 2, but my understanding is it's a petroleum site, is that correct? So CERCLA does not address petroleum, so our government follows the state program for addressing petroleum releases. So that site is being addressed under the Massachusetts contingency plan. But for the remedial investigation for PFAS, we're following CERCLA because that contaminant is addressed under CERCLA.
Okay, so how does that square with the lease?
Well,
Well, with the lease, I don't know, I'm not a real property person, I can ask someone back in, but I mean, when we, back in the office, when we do like this for CERCLA, we're not gonna follow state regulations. And like she said, Site 2 has to do with petroleum only, so we're doing the performance work statement to do that lease addendum, but we're not, so we're just adding the performance work statement like to the lease. How it squares with the lease, like, I'd have to go back and, I'm not a real property person.
Right, so
That's
for
what I can-
a petroleum thing, it might totally square with the lease by itself. But a lot of times, once you touch something, right, that it becomes open. And the thing is, if that lease becomes open for review, I want to know how we're going to square away the fact that the PFAS and the CERCLA are happening with the lease where it is specifically outlined that you will follow the state standard. Now, the interesting thing is that in this case, the federal standard moved into a better position, right? But I don't know that that's necessarily going to stay there. And I know that the state one was also going to move. So this conversation about that weird legal, I'm a scientist, not a law person.
Yeah, no,
The law thing never makes logical sense to me.
Yeah.
So, right, because legal and fair are synonyms, and so the whole thing goes out the window. But
True.
if you could have someone clear up what that means, right? And specifically go back, what's his name? Randy Chambers, go tell him, Kristen Mello in Westfield is asking weird questions again and needs some clarification.
No, I understand. Yeah,
Okay.
I can talk to Randy about it, but just in general, we follow the CERCLA process because it's federal investigation and we followed that program, and that program, we can't run with the state program. And that's probably gonna be the answer that I get from Randy as well, but I can, and it's just gonna be a separate question from the lease altogether.
Yeah, but then how is the lease being entered into in good faith, right? That's my question. That is, this is my question.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, and sorry to be argumentative about it, but
no, you can be an argument if you want.
that's our, yeah.
I'm not worried. I'll talk to Randy. I can
Okay.
ask him a question.
Robert, I'm gonna take that down as an action, for
Yeah.
follow-up.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Online, stated that Site 2 will have a permanent.
Tom Barzik from BBE stated that Site 2 will have a permanent solution statement, which is following the Massachusetts contingency plan.
So I'm guessing, I don't know because I'm not involved, but I'm guessing that the lease amendment has to do with the petroleum.
Mhm.
The lease amendment, because it's going through,
This is Lieutenant Colonel Sinclair.
thank you, Colonel Sinclair. Very broad stroke, the lease amendment is only for the Site 2, and it is for limited activity use. Did I say that right?
Activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got the word back. So it's only to amend that portion and include
The activity and use limitation, so the activity and use limitation probably says something like, you need to dig in this area, there might be residual petroleum, so you need a safety plan in place to deal with petroleum.
Right, don't have a daycare center here, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that only covers that. It has nothing to do, that amendment or that lease that's going, that real property package has nothing to do with the PFAS and everything else. That is totally separate. So in terms of this one action, in terms of the amendment, is only dealing with the site two. The
Activity and use limitation, yeah.
I want to go limitation unit activity. So it's only dealing with that, and I actually had to sign that package yesterday.
Yeah,
Okay.
I still want clarification. In writing if I can.
Okay, other questions and comments on the environmental restoration program presentation? Hot diggity, we might get out of here on time. Is there anyone from the public online or in the room that has any questions that have been holding them? Any comments in, anything written in the comments that we need to address? Most of them have been answers, which I think have been, answered in the room. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is your contact information. I think you all have this and you all have it in your handouts. I guess at some point we're gonna be turning this over to you to changing that to your name, but you'll let me know when. You let me know when, okay? And websites for more information, and I think you all have these as well. Next slide, I think, is closing remarks by Colonel Glass and Jane. You can rock, paper, scissors, who goes first? It's up to you.
Thank you, it was very informative and, we have to take it all in.
Okay, thanks, Jane.
Yeah.
Colonel?
I have nothing else to add. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to continuing to work with you guys.
All right, well, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and I'm shocked that it's 7:28, so thank you all.
Get the time machine out.
Thanks, everybody. We're gonna close down the meeting online as well. I appreciate your
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.